it was, I thought, a very gripping speech. I mean, obviously the backdrop is the rather remarkable turn of events on Friday when the Conservative Party kind of threw away economic competence and announced a massive borrowing binge in order to give tax handouts to people already well off. And I think there's been a real sense of revulsion for that change.
I get that, right, but have Labour costed any of this at the minute? We're hearing about Great British Energy, a nationalisation programme. I don't know anything about the money on that one. 100 billion quid for a price freeze for energy bills. We're going to look at no tax cuts for the top earners, directly looking to pump that into the NHS and NHS staff, while economics editor said that doesn't add up.
That's right. No, it does add up. And Keir made it clear in his speech that everything we're going to be announcing will be properly costed, and we will reduce borrowing over a period. Now, it is absolutely right during the pandemic and now to be borrowing to get people through the huge difficulties that everybody is facing. But it's got to be sustainable. You can't just borrow forever, which appeared to be what the Chancellor announced on Friday. And our commitment will be over a period to bring borrowing down. And the figures will all be set out for how that's going to be done.
So we'll just have to wait and see, will we?
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to go ahead with the corporation tax cut, for example. That's about £17 billion worth. So the figures will add up.
Interesting stuff, actually. Just the mood generally at this conference. A quiet confidence, it must be said. We've seen union flags dotted around the national anthem. Some other policies here. Look, he said he's not going to reverse Brexit. I don't really think that we ever thought he necessarily was. Fascinating one here. Controlled immigration and a points-based immigration system. I wonder how that's going to go down well with some, certainly towards the left of the Labour Party, who potentially would want basically open borders.
No, I don't think any part of the Labour Party, certainly the Labour Party corporately, has never argued that we should have open borders. It does need to be properly managed, but it needs to be fair. And too often, under the current Home Office arrangements, things are not fair, partly just because it's such a shambles. People wait for months, if not years, for their applications
that they can
to
stay
be determined, or whatever. And it's just a mess. That all does need to be sorted out. But there's got to be a properly managed, fair system that everybody can understand. But I think you're right about the confidence. That was, I thought, a different tone about Keir's speech today. There is a new confidence on his part and on the party.
Look, there is. It's undeniable. There really is. And it's interesting because, look, with the best will in the world, Keir Starmer, all these links to Tony Blair, he's not Tony Blair, right, for a variety of different reasons. He's just not. And he's not got that same delivery, you could argue maybe the natural element of charisma. I don't know whether or not it's just because Boris Johnson has gone and we're now comparing him with the way that Liz Truss talks, or whether he's got better. But his delivery today, I've got to be honest with you, was pretty good.
It was a good deal better, and I think it was about confidence rather than who you're comparing him with. There is a new confidence on his part, and to some extent, of course, that is about, I think, the change of Conservative leadership and the change of Prime Minister and what they've been doing over the last week. But it was clear in the delivery and in the content, I think, as well.
I just wonder whether or not there's a slight issue for you guys on the Labour side of the fence, which is that the next general election might be a couple of years away. And by then, the specific economic situation we're seeing ourselves in right now may well have changed. We may well end up with a situation where this Tory go for growth policy has paid off at least a bit, and people aren't quite as desperate as they are today. This divide between, I hate to put it in black and white terms, but, you know, tax cuts for the rich and robbing the poor, etc., might not exist, and therefore the wind might be sucked out of Keir's sails.
Well, let's see. I mean, Boris Johnson, for all his faults, was onto something, I think, when he was talking about levelling up. He acknowledged the need for tackling regional inequalities, whereas the implication from Friday is that inequality is a great thing because it forces everybody to work and boosts the economy. Now, I don't think that is an electorally winning proposition that the Conservative Party has got behind as of last Friday.
I think it just relies on people being able to actually physically look in their bank accounts and see more money, as opposed to being able to have it justified to you verbally.
Yeah, but the only people who are going to see more money are people who earn more than £155,000 a year. I mean, it's the top 1%, as Keir said in his speech today. And, you know, I don't see that as being a winning proposition, but we'll see.
We will indeed. Look, again, people talked about whether or not the Rupert Huck stuff is going to overshadow Keir's speech. I've asked you rather a lot of questions about Keir's speech, so I hope people don't think it's been overshadowed, but I do have to actually really ask you about this, and indeed I want to. For far too long, in my opinion, I was sitting here reporting on a nastiness amongst certain groups in the Labour Party, whether it's to do with anti-Semitism or whatever, student-level politics, pigeonholing, all this kind of stuff. And are we back there now? Rupert Huck's comments about Kwasi Kwarteng being superficially black. Look, can I just say, if either you or I, as white men, had said anything like that, we'd never work again. It'd be racist, wouldn't it?
Well, Rupert certainly is not a nasty person, but she's been suspended. She's had the whip withdrawn from her.
Do you think what she said was racist?
It's an extremely unwise and I think mistaken thing to say, and I hope that she would recognise that. And I think the response of the party, the response of Keir very quickly, just taking her off the whip, was the right thing to do.
If Boris Johnson or someone else on the right, Jacob Rees-Mogg, had said that, you'd be sat here now saying they were racist, wouldn't you?
I probably wouldn't myself,
okay.
But I think it was wrong, and whoever said it, I think it would be wrong.
OK, and so as far as you're concerned, Labour hasn't got a race problem, because Keir Starmer, he mentioned earlier on in his speech about trying to move away from anti-Semitism and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So we dragged immediately back into a little bit of a race row, as it were. You think that this is an isolated incident?
Yeah, and a fairly minor one, which has been very quickly dealt with, absolutely rightly.